Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Welcome to Beach Walk Blog. Today I want to talk about hamstrings, about flexibility, and about how hamstring flexibility, or indeed too much or lack thereof, affects how you run. And also how the pelvis affects what you feel. And remember, what you feel is a sensation, and you decide what that sensation means. Or maybe somebody else has decided for you and you've just accepted that. Okay, so hamstrings do not need to be that flexible. And a post that I did in the public group the other day was about if you can stand on one leg and do this movement, get your knee up with your knee bent, so hip flexion, knee flexion. If you can get your knee up to indeed, let's say hip height, so knee up at hip height so that the femur is parallel with the ground, you have enough flexibility in your hamstrings, period, to run. Okay, so why is that? Well, the hamstring crosses, most of the hamstring muscles cross two joints. It crosses the hip and it crosses the knee. So when you flex the knee, when you bend the knee and you flex the hip, you're asking for length at one end of the hamstring and you're creating slack at the other end. So if I bend my knee with my hip up, with my knee up like this, with my leg up like this, I am essentially having slack at this end of my hamstring, but at the other end, at the hip end, under here, I'm asking for length. Now, what happens when I do a gait analysis and I see somebody running and they're doing this? They're really like reaching out for the ground. Well, what that's asking for is for length at both ends of the hamstring. It's asking for length at the hip and length at the back of the knee, or just above the back of the knee in the back of the thigh. So that's asking for length in two places where really we should never be in that position when we're running. Now, if you watch any professional elite level runner, they will get to a position where they are like this, where the hip is flexed and the knee is flexed. And they might go to here, but then the hip will start to extend. So as the knee starts to extend, the hip starts to extend as well. So what we're getting is shortening at the hip in the hamstring muscle and lengthening at the knee of the hamstring muscle. So essentially we're creating a net zero in the length of the hamstring. Okay, so think of it like this. If I flex my knee, I've created a slackness here, and if I flex my hip, I've created a lengthening situation at the back. So essentially what I've done is I've created -1 at the knee and +1 at the hip. Now when I straighten the knee, I've gone +1 at the knee and +1 at the hip, so I need more length, I need more flexibility, I need more length in the hamstring to do that. But of course that should never happen. That should never happen when we run. And that's the problem. The problem is not that you need more hamstring flexibility. The problem is that the way you run is taking your body to a point that it should never go to, thus demanding more length, more flexibility. And that's the problem. It should never happen. It's not that you don't have enough, it's that the position you're getting into should never happen. So you need to retrain that movement so that you never get into that position and thus never need more flexibility, because you don't need more flexibility. As we've just explained, if you're getting into a position that you should never be getting into, there's a problem in the first place, right? That is the problem. So fix the real problem, don't create a new one. Okay, you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. You're thinking that, oh, I've got tight hamstrings and they need more length, and it's like, no, you give them more length and your running form will just be even worse. It will be even more affected and less effective, right? Because you're not going to fix the reason why. You're forever going to be chasing more flexibility forever. And like we just said, that doesn't, you don't need more flexibility. You never did. All right, so the next point, why the pelvis affects the hamstrings. Well, if you've got a situation, I'm going to grab this piece of wood. If you have a situation like this is your pelvis, your hamstrings are at this end and your quads and your hip flexors are at this end. And what happens is, if the pelvis is tilted forwards, then this end is higher than this end. So now this end is lengthening or asking for more length at the hip. Yeah? So let's say I put a piece of elastic onto this end here and attached it down to the ground. And then I went like that. I've just stretched that hamstring, right? So I've just placed that hamstring muscle on a stretch. Now, if your if your pelvis is in this situation all the time, there's a problem, because you're asking for length in that hamstring all the time, and it should never be that way. It should fluctuate between this and this, right? Make sense? Now, that's what happens with a lot of people. They're stuck in this position where they have an anteriorly tilted pelvis. The pelvis is actually tilted forwards at the front and tilted upwards at the back. So it's tilted downwards at the front, upwards at the back, thus creating a situation in the hamstrings where they are constantly at length. So like we talked about before, this net zero effect, right? So when I flex my knee and I flex my hip, I create length at one end of the hamstrings and I create slack at the other end. So it's a net zero. But if I straighten the knee and I flex my hip, I create a net 2. So I've asked for length at the knee, that's a 1, and I've asked for length at the hip, that's 2. If I flex the knee and I extend the hip like that, what I've done is created a -2. Now I don't want to be in a situation with my hamstrings, getting chased by the water. I don't want to be in a situation with my hamstrings where it's a net -2. Right? A net +2. I want to be at 0, or something between a half and a half. Half plus a half minus a half. I want to be something like that. I don't want to be at -2, or +2, where I've asked for length at both ends. Because what that does is, that tells me that, oh, my hamstrings are tight. But like we said before, that should never be happening when you're running. You should never be getting into that situation when you're running. Right? So that's the problem here. Not the fact that your hamstrings are tight. They're not tight. They're actually taut. T-A-U-T, taut, meaning already stretched. Go and look that word up, taut. It's what happens when you pull a rope. You pull it taut. You don't pull it tight. You pull a rope taut. Right? So if you're using the correct words, and this applies at the soleus muscle as well, in the calf. Right? It gets pulled taut. And that's where people are confusing that sensation. The feeling that you get where you think, oh, I've got tight hamstrings, or oh, I've got tight calves. No, it's the wrong word. Again, it's the wrong word. It's not tight, it's taut, because it's being pulled into length. Right? If I use this here, when it's like this, right, that would be tight. But when I do this, and I put my foot at this end and I pull it, well, it's going to snap. Hey, that's a great demonstration. I pull it taut, and then if I continue to pull it, it snaps. Right? Now remember, muscles don't stretch. It's the fascial tissue that stretches. Muscle does not stretch. Okay, just understand this. Muscle does not stretch. Fascia stretches. Fascia is designed to stretch, but it's only designed to stretch to a certain point for a certain amount of time. So a certain length for a certain time, or a certain number of repetitions, before it gets fatigued, mechanically fatigued. Now imagine a spring. I'm gonna see if I can find a little demo thing to show you, because there's loads of stuff on the beach that I can use. All right, let's see if this works. Yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, that's great. Okay, now see this? Now this is like, imagine this is fascia. So you've just landed, you just hit the ground, and then you stretch the fascia, and then it goes back again. And then you land on the ground again, you stretch the fascia, and then you land again, and it recoils. And then you stretch the fascia, and then it recoils. It's kind of like a spring. Now, fascia, it deforms. It gets what's called creep. And creep is a mechanical term. It's a physics term, an engineering term. Mechanical creep is, imagine a spring, and what we think of a spring as being like this, it compresses and then it snaps back. Well, think of a spring that goes the other way as well, because springs actually go outwards and come back. They go longer and then snap back. Well, if you pull it enough, pull that spring enough, it will deform. And that's what happens to elastic. That's what happens to elastic bands. When you pull them enough and you use them enough and you stretch them enough and you stretch them enough times, they actually start to deform and they get what's called creep. So they actually get longer. Now you might, if you've got a set of resistance bands, you'll see that in your resistance bands. The ones that are the weakest will stretch the easiest and they'll deform the easiest. All right? The ones that you use the most will then get deformed the quickest. They'll go longer, they'll get longer, and they'll lose their elasticity. And that's the same thing with not only fascia, but also with tendon. And your body parts, your tissues in your body, the soft tissues in your body, so fascia, tendon, ligaments, and also skin, and also cartilage, and also, to a point, muscle and bone. It's on a spectrum of elasticity. Now bones are not brittle. So you know when you've cooked a chicken, the bone is all brittle. Okay, that's not how bone is inside of our bodies. Our bones are actually flexible. They are elastic, and they are very elastic. Now, what you think of as being something that's very elastic, like an elastic band, is actually, it's not very elastic, because elasticity is on a spectrum as well. And I don't want to go too deep into this because this is kind of more physics, really. But bones, elasticity is actually something that describes how resistant a material is to being deformed under load. So if you think of bones don't deform, they don't change much when load is applied. That means it's highly elastic, it's very elastic. But that also means that once it goes past its break point, once it goes past its deformation point, it means that it breaks very quickly, very easily. So think of a bone, and then you've just landed on the ground. So think of your tibia. So this bone, the big bone here, you've just landed on the ground, and then that bone actually deforms. It bends a little bit. It doesn't bend much because it's designed not to bend much, but it is designed to bend. And bones are designed to bend in a certain way. And for example, the tibia is designed to bend backwards. It's actually designed to bend backwards. So when it bends forwards, i.e. it flexes, so it's designed to do this, not this. Yeah? So it's designed to do this, but not this. And when it does too much of the wrong thing, what we actually get is we get a lengthening effect on the front of the shin bone, the tibia bone, and we start to get fractures. And that is That is what happens with the tibia bone when you're getting shin splints. And that is a product of what we've just been talking about, which is this situation with the leg where it's overextending and it's not got enough strength, or it has the wrong amount of strength, and it's not getting pulled back before the landing. So what I always say, landing on a backward traveling leg, you're not doing that. So if you're someone who's struggling with two things, or one of these two things, so you're struggling with hamstring tightness, I'll put that in quotes, tightness, because we know it's not tightness, it's tautness. If you're struggling with hamstring tautness, or you're struggling with shin splints, three things. If you're struggling with Achilles or calf issues, four things. Proximal hamstring tendinopathy. What you have is a situation where your hamstrings are actually too long, they're too taut, they're actually taut, they're already stretched. And you have this situation with, probably most likely with your pelvis, where it's tilted forwards, and you don't have the ability to pull your leg back before it lands on the ground. This is my favourite part of this beach. I love this bit. Comes around here. This changes every day. This is different every single day. This is the most I've seen this channel go out and come back. See how it goes back? Because there's a river just over here that comes down. The mouth of the river's there. It's great. I love it. So yeah, the situation is with your pelvis that it's just been in the wrong position, and it's creating this +1 at the hip and then +1 at the knee with the hamstring. So it's just not doing its job very well. So you need to retrain that system to do its job better, to just basically be better. And you need to adjust the bias between the system that is in the front of your body and the system that's in the back of your body in specific places. It's not just the front and the back. That's a too simplistic model. It doesn't work that way. There is no just front and back, because, you know, half of the muscles in your torso start in the front and end in the back. So, you know, this thing about posterior chain, it's kind of it doesn't really work that way. There isn't really a posterior chain, not in that way. So anyway, I digress. So hamstrings, stop stretching them. Just stop stretching them. The reason why you're stretching them is because you think that they're tight, because the way that you run is giving you the sensation of whatever it is, a feeling, a sensation, and you are deciding, or somebody has told you, that sensation equals tightness. It doesn't equal tightness. It equals wrong movement. It equals poor movement, poor gait cycle movement, putting you into a position that creates this feeling of restriction, but it's not actually that. It's actually the fact that you move the way you do, which is giving you the sensation it's giving you, and you are deciding that sensation means it's tight, which then therefore to you and whoever told you means you must stretch to make it longer. But what you're doing is actually damaging the system even further. You're just making it worse. Okay? You have to understand this at a level of how the system works. It's not just one muscle, and it's not just one thing. Oh, I stretch this and it'll all be okay. No, it won't, because that's not how the system works. The system doesn't work that way. Your car is not just wheels. It's not just an engine. It's not just a steering wheel. It's not just brakes or just suspension. It's all of those things. And your body is obviously, your body isn't a car. It's a biomechanical. It's not just mechanical. It's biological, mechanical, biomechanical. It's muscles, tendons, fascia, soft tissue. It's chemical. It's mechanical. It's a lot more than that. And if you start to just think differently, or at least, let's just say, just be open to the concept of what you think it is, it isn't. What you think it is, it isn't. Then, just with that start point, you can start to think differently and allow yourself to just go, okay, what if this guy who does these crazy beach walks and talks into his phone, what if he's right? What if all the things that I've been doing all this time are actually making it worse? Because I know that that's what it was for me. I was just making it worse, right? I was just making it worse. Stretch this, stretch that. It doesn't work, right? So you absolutely have to stop stretching, and your hamstrings are not the problem. They're caught in they're the culprit. They're caught in something. They're the innocent party caught in the system of things going wrong, right? They're the innocent bystander just trying to do their job, and they're caught in the act of what's going on around them, and they get the blame. The same thing as your calves do, your calf muscles. You blame your calf muscles. Oh, they're tight. They're not tight, they're weak. They're taut. And the reason why they're taut is because of the rest of the body forcing it to do something that it doesn't want to do. It's being held at gunpoint doing a job that it doesn't want to do. It wasn't designed for it. It's being overworked, and making it do more work is not going to fix the problem. Making it stronger is not going to fix the problem. What's going to fix the problem is making it so that it doesn't have to do the job that you're asking it to do. That's what's going to fix the problem. You know, if you're overworked and overstressed, I don't give you more work and more stress in order to make you less worked and less stressed, right? That's crazy. That's insanity right there. You're overworked, overstressed. Oh, okay, I know how to fix that. I'll give you more work and more stress. That's essentially what you're doing when you don't fix the problem. You're just trying to throw more at it. Okay, so a situation where something is overworking is not by choice. It's by function. It's functioning in a way that's placing it into a situation where it's overworking. It's having to overwork. It's not because it's because it's choosing to, or because it's not strong enough. Otherwise, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds wouldn't be running faster than you are, right? It's because you function in a way that places these structures under too much load, under too much stress. So change the situation and they won't be under as much stress. They won't be under as much load. So therefore they'll work under different conditions. They'll still do the same job. It's like you took a job, you accepted a job that you were told was a 9 to 5 job, and it actually turns into a 7 till 8 job. So it turns into an 11-hour job rather than an 8-hour job. Well, you don't leave and go to another 11-hour a day job. What you do is you figure out the way to make your 11-hour job back into an 8-hour a day job. So you keep the same job, you just improve your working conditions. And that's what you need to do with your body. You need to improve the working conditions. Right? Take the shitty conditions away and you're left with good working conditions. Right? And there we go. Hamstrings. They're not tight, they're taut. Stop stretching your hamstrings. Take care. Until next time. Look after yourselves. The Sling Method. Bye.